Long ago, in a kingdom veiled by time, there had once been 13 princesses. The princesses were born one after another, each a year apart, and for their first 12 years they were like any other children, playful, curious, full of life. But as their 13th birthdays approached, something changed. Their laughter grew distant, their eyes turned glassy. They no longer played in the gardens or sang in the halls. A quiet melancholy settled over them, as if they knew what was coming. And then, on the night they turned 13, they danced. Before the change, the palace had been alive with their joy. Their voices rang through the halls as they sang together. Their feet pounded against stone as they played in the courtyards, and their fingers wove crowns of wildflowers for their youngest sister Annie. She had been their light, a small, golden-haired girl with a laugh like bells. But when Annie turned 13, she disappeared. Annie's name was erased from memory, her place at the table left empty, and no one, not even the king, ever spoke of her again. No one knew where the princesses went at night, only that by morning their silk slippers were in tatters, their feet bruised and aching. The king, maddened by the mystery, declared that any man who could uncover their secret would earn his kingdom and a bride. Those who failed would vanish, just as countless others had before them. For years the king had sent out decrees, calling upon knights, scholars, and even commoners to solve the mystery of his daughters. One by one they had come, lured by the promise of wealth and power. And one by one they had failed, disappearing without a trace. The kingdom whispered of dark magic, of men swallowed by shadows beneath the castle. Dorian had seen much of war, its horrors etched into his soul. He had once been a proud soldier, fighting for a kingdom that had long since forgotten him. The battlefields had left him with scars, some visible, others buried deep in his mind. His comrades had fallen, his purpose had faded, and all that remained was the restless need to move forward. When Dorian saw the latest decree posted in the town square, a worn parchment marked with the royal seal, something in him stirred. He had spent too long wandering, with no purpose beyond survival. Here was a mystery that needed solving, a truth buried beneath years of silence. If so many had failed, why? And if none had returned, where had they gone? Something in him stirred. Not ambition nor greed, just a desire to uncover a truth hidden from the world. And so, he made his way to the castle. Before he arrived at the gates, he met an old woman on the road. "Do not drink their wine," she warned him. "Do not trust their smiles. And most of all, listen to the silence beneath their feet." She pressed a cloak into his hands, light as gossamer. "Wear this, and they will not see you." That night, he feigned sleep as the princesses slipped from their beds. As the eldest pressed a hidden stone in the wall, the floorboards shuddered, revealing a spiraling staircase. One by one, they descended. Invisible beneath his cloak, the soldier followed. The air grew colder as they descended, the scent of damp stone and something metallic thickening. At the base of the stairs stretched an underground river, dark and still. 13 black boats awaited them, each manned by a silent prince, their faces too perfect, too pale. The princesses climbed aboard, their movements smooth, unnatural. Except one was missing, their movements smooth, unnatural. Dorian stepped into the last boat, unseen. As they drifted across the water, he saw hands, pale and skeletal, reach up from the depths, grasping at the sides of the boats. The water did not ripple. On the other shore stood a golden palace, its halls aglow with an unnatural light. Music swelled from nowhere as the princesses entered a grand ballroom, spinning and twirling with their silent partners. But something was wrong. Their smiles were too strained, their laughter hollow. He watched them dance, their feet moving in perfect unison, as if controlled by unseen strings. And then he heard the whisper, "You mustn't be seen." Dorian stiffened. The voice had come from nowhere, and yet it was everywhere. A shiver ran down his spine. He followed the sound down a dark corridor, away from the ballroom's golden glow, past tapestries woven with shifting shadows. There, in a forgotten chamber, huddled a girl. Her dress was torn, her hair wild, her skin pale as moonlight. She flinched as he entered, eyes wide with terror. "They'll hear you." He knelt before her, lifting his cloak slightly so she could see his face. "Who are you?" Her breath hitched. I was one of them." Understanding settled over him like a heavy fog. "The 13th? She nodded, trembling. "One must stay behind so the rest may return." She took a shaky breath, her fingers twisting into the tattered fabric of her dress. "It was never a dream," she whispered. "The underground palace is a prison, and we are its prisoners." Dorian frowned but let her continue. "The princes, they are not what they seem. They are not lovers, nor even men. They are something else, something ancient, something that needs us." Her voice dropped lower. "Each night we dance, not out of joy, but out of duty. It is the price that was demanded of us long ago." Dorian's gut twisted. "A bargain?" She nodded. "One we never agreed to, but one we cannot break. When I turned 13, I understood what was coming. I tried to run, but the others, they wouldn't let me." Her voice cracked, eyes filling with tears. "They whispered it to me as they held me back, as they sealed the door behind them." Her shoulders trembled, the memory breaking her all over again. "One must stay behind so the rest may return." Dorian clenched his fists, fury rising in his chest. The very sisters who should have protected her had condemned her instead. "Then we leave. Now." "They whispered it to me," she said, voice brittle. "That it had to be me." Dorian clenched his fists. "Then we leave. Now." She hesitated. "They always find me." "Not this time." Clutching her wrist, he led her back through the winding corridors, past the whispering walls. The ballroom still pulsed with music, the princesses spinning, unaware. He held his breath as they slipped past. As they ascended the stone staircase, a breathless hush filled the air. The eldest princess paused mid-step, head tilting as if listening to something unseen. Dorian and the girl reached the top just as the door sealed behind them. They ran. Far, far away, they traveled across endless landscapes, through shadowed forests where the trees whispered secrets, across barren fields where the wind howled like the voices of the lost, and over mountains shrouded in mist. They survived on determination alone, stealing what food they could, huddling together for warmth in abandoned shelters, always looking over their shoulders for unseen pursuers. The fear of being dragged back never left them, but neither did the hope of freedom. At last, they reached Dorian's village, a quiet place, untouched by the horrors of the kingdom they had left behind. It was there, among the rolling green hills and cobbled streets, that they finally began to heal. Dorian and Annie built a new life, one of love and peace. They tilled the land, mended what was broken, and let the weight of the past settle into memories rather than wounds. In time, they had a daughter, bright-eyed and wild-hearted, Dorothy, a child who knew nothing of the curse that had nearly stolen her mother away. For years, happiness was theirs. Yet, in quiet moments, the soldier would catch his wife staring at Dorothy with haunted eyes, as though seeing a shadow only she could recognize. As their daughter's 13th birthday approached, she began to dream of golden floors, vast and endless, gleaming beneath a phantom glow. She saw shadows moving in the corners of her mind, figures draped in silk, faces obscured by veils. She felt unseen hands guiding her, their touch cold but insistent, pulling her forward into a dance she did not understand. She woke with music lingering in her ears, a melody both beautiful and wrong. Her feet ached, though she had not moved from her bed. Night after night, she spoke of it to her mother, whispering about the strange world that visited her dreams. Annie's face would pale, her fingers gripping her daughter's arms as if to anchor her in the waking world. She told her not to worry, that dreams were just dreams, but her voice trembled with every reassurance. And still, the music played on. Then, on the eve of her birthday, something changed. That night, an unnatural stillness filled the air. Dorian dreamt of golden floors and unseen eyes watching from the dark. His wife awoke with a scream, heart pounding in her chest. They ran to their daughter's room. She was gone. They searched endlessly. They followed every whisper, scoured every forgotten path, traveled to distant lands where rumors spoke of hidden doors and lost souls. Dorian scoured ancient texts, desperate for any mention of the underground palace. But there was nothing, only vague legends and fading echoes of stories no one dared to remember. Annie pleaded with old mystics, their eyes cloudy with time, but they only shook their heads and turned her away. They retraced their steps, returning to the kingdom they had once fled, sneaking past guards and creeping through the castle's forgotten halls. The hidden passage, once so clear, was now nothing more than solid stone. No secret stairwell, no whispered voices from below. It was as if the palace had never existed at all. Annie screamed into the night, calling her daughter's name, but only silence answered. The underground palace had sealed itself away, and with it, Dorothy was lost. Defeated, they returned home, and there, on their pillow, lay a single note, written in elegant curling script. The sisters had needed Dorothy. One of the 12 had perished, perhaps worn too thin by the endless nights of dancing, perhaps claimed by the unseen forces that ruled the palace below. Without 12, the balance had shifted, the contract broken. A new soul was required to restore it, and who better than the daughter of the one who had escaped? The note continued. One must stay behind, so the rest may return. Dorian fell to his knees. His wife let out a sound that was neither scream nor sob but something raw, broken. Far below, in a palace of gold, the music began again. Thank you for joining us in the world of Twilight Fables. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more.